My parents wore head-to-toe black to my wedding, not to mourn, but as a statement. Before I could even walk down the aisle, my mother cornered me in the bridal suite, tossed a legal document onto my vanity, and hissed, "Sign your house over to your sister, or we ruin today for everyone." My lawyer begged me to call security. The entire room thought I was going to collapse. Instead, I picked up the pen, smiled, and signed every single page. My sister gloated, believing she had just stolen my life savings. But what she didn't realize was that I had already altered the title deed 48 hours prior. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end, and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. Because the look on my mother's face at the reception was worth every penny. My name is Clara, and at 31, I thought I'd finally built a life free from my family's drama. Working as a commercial architect meant late nights and relentless discipline, but it allowed me to buy a beautiful 3-bedroom home in Oregon entirely on my own. My parents, however, never celebrated my success. To them, my achievements were just resources waiting to be redistributed to my younger sister, Maya. Maya was the undisputed golden child, a woman who treated responsibilities like optional suggestions and left a trail of unpaid debts behind every failed business venture. Whenever Maya stumbled, my parents expected me to cushion her fall, guilt-tripping me about family loyalty. 3 years ago, when I closed on my house, my mother didn't say she was proud. She asked why I needed 3 bedrooms when Maya was struggling to pay rent. The quiet resentment had been brewing for years, but I foolishly believed my wedding day would be the one time they'd set their entitlement aside. The morning of my wedding was supposed to be filled with laughter and anticipation, but the second my parents and Maya arrived, the energy in the room completely turned to ice. They walked into the venue wearing head-to-toe jet-black funeral attire, looking like a solemn mourning party amidst a sea of white roses. Before I could even finish buttoning my gown, my mother barged into the bridal suite, locking the door behind her. Without a word of congratulations, she tossed a thick legal folder onto my vanity, right beside my bouquet. Maya stood beside her with a triumphant, cruel smirk. "Sign the house transfer papers over to Maya right now," my mother demanded, her voice dripping with cold malice. "She needs stability after her boutique closed, and you're marrying a man with a decent income anyway." When I stared at her in total disbelief, my father stepped forward, issuing a vicious ultimatum. They promised to walk out, make a public scene in front of Mark's conservative family, and tell every guest that I was a selfish daughter who abandoned her own blood if I didn't sign before walking down the aisle. My maid of honor gasped, immediately stepping between us and threatening to call venue security to throw them out. My lawyer, who happened to be one of my bridesmaids, leaned in and practically begged me to hold firm, assuring me this crude ambush had zero legal standing. The entire room held its breath, waiting for me to explode or break down in tears. Instead, a strange sense of calm washed over me. I picked up the silver pen sitting on my vanity, looked my mother straight in the eye, and quietly signed every single designated line on the transfer documents without uttering a single word of protest. My parents exchanged stunned glances, completely caught off guard by how easily I'd surrendered. Maya snatched the signed folder off the table, holding it against her chest like a prize, her smug grin widening into a gloating sneer. She genuinely believed she'd just coerced me into handing over my life savings and my home for nothing. Without another word, the 3 of them turned and strutted out of the suite, utterly convinced they had just executed the ultimate power move and stolen my future right out from under me. Walking down the aisle toward Mark, the lingering tension in the air vanished the moment our eyes met. The ceremony went off without a hitch, a stunning blur of vows and joyful tears that completely overshadowed my family's bitter presence in the front row. But at the reception, my mother couldn't resist taking one last public swipe. Uninvited, she grabbed the microphone during the toasts, her black dress contrasting sharply with the celebratory room. "I just want to thank Clara for finally putting family first," she announced, her voice echoing through the speakers with backhanded warmth. "She's finally grown up and given Maya the fresh start she deserves." A confused hush fell over the guests, but I simply smiled and took the microphone next. "I'm just glad everyone gets what they truly deserve today," I said smoothly, raising my champagne glass toward my sister. Maya beamed, completely oblivious to the double meaning behind my words. She kept sipping her expensive wine, utterly convinced she'd won, while Mark squeezed my hand under the table, knowing the storm that was coming for her. What my family didn't know was that 48 hours before the wedding, a mutual friend warned me about their desperate plan to corner me at the venue. Instead of panicking, I immediately called my real estate attorney to set a quiet trap. The house was no longer listed under my personal name. 2 days prior, I had legally restructured the title, placing the property under a holding LLC. That company wasn't just an empty shell. It carried a fresh $85,000 commercial renovation loan with a massive balloon payment due in 60 days, alongside accumulated back taxes from an adjacent parcel. When my mother handed me those transfer papers, I wasn't signing away my personal home. The document specifically transferred ownership of the holding LLC itself. By forcing me to sign, Maya hadn't legally acquired a free $500,000 house. She had unwittingly assumed full personal liability for the company's crushing debts. Every single penny of that impending $85,000 loan, along with the immediate tax obligations, now legally belonged to my darling sister, completely insulating my personal credit and leaving her trapped in a financial nightmare of her own making. The Monday after the wedding, while Mark and I were relaxing on a beach in Maui, Maya's glorious illusion completely shattered. She had marched into the county records office to finalize her victory, only to receive a formal notice from the bank detailing her newly inherited liabilities. My phone instantly lit up with dozens of frantic missed calls and hysterical text messages. When I finally answered, my mother's voice vibrated through the speaker in a shrill panic, screaming that the bank was demanding an immediate $85,000 payment or they would initiate rapid foreclosure proceedings against Maya. She demanded that I undo the paperwork at once and take back the company. I took a slow sip of my iced drink, listened to her hyperventilate, and calmly reminded her that she had forced me to sign a legally binding contract under threat of ruining my wedding day. I politely explained that the transfer was absolute, the debt was entirely Maya's responsibility now, and that any further harassment would be directed straight to my attorney before hanging up on her screams. Unable to secure a loan to cover the balloon payment, Maya was forced to liquidate her luxury car and sell off her prized possessions at a fraction of their value just to satisfy the immediate tax liabilities and keep the bank at bay. She had to take on 2 grueling jobs just to stay afloat, suffering the exact financial hardship she'd spent her life avoiding. Meanwhile, Mark and I used our untouched savings to purchase a gorgeous waterfront home, completely unbothered by my family's downfall. Cutting ties with them was the most liberating decision of my life, giving me the peace I'd always deserved. What would you have done in my position? Would you have pulled off a scheme like this to teach your family a lesson, or would you have just called security right at the bridal suite door? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more dramatic stories.